welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Turn the Page podcast. I am your host today, Jessica, and I'm super happy. This is one of my favorite types of interviews because I am interviewing a Syosset alum who you wrote a book and you have like so many other great things going on. This is going to kind of be equal parts talking about your book for my sister, and it's going to be a little bit more also about your time in Syosset. I hope that's okay with you.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd love to talk about Syosset.
Without any further ado, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us about your novel and everything else.
Sure. So my name's Puja. My last name's Shah. Same name as when I was at Syosset. I graduated Syosset High School in 1999. And it's been a long time. And like Jessica mentioned, a lot's happened. So you know, it's just amazing to see how my affinity for my hometown still remains. Every time I meet anyone from Syosset, I'm like, so happy. But yeah, I wrote a book recently. It's debuting on October 18th. It's very exciting. I have been an avid writer my whole life, including my time in Syosset. I took a little turn and went into healthcare. I was in public health for a number of years and finally decided to give this a shot. Got a book deal last year and it's coming out. It's called For My Sister, and it's about two twin girls, Amla and Asya. They are unknowingly trafficked in India after a confluence of unfortunate events that occur. Yet their sister bond is so strong, so the novel follows them throughout, and the reader is then learns if they come back to each other or not. So that's just the book in a nutshell, and I'm excited to talk about it and everything.
It sounds like you've had an interesting journey, and you write a story about two identical twins who have an interesting journey in and of itself. So I guess kind of working backwards. So where did the roots of this story begin? And I know that this story, it deals a lot with trafficking, child trafficking, human trafficking. Could you talk a little bit about the research that went into the story, and if that came first and the story came later?
Yeah, no, that is a really good question. Like I had mentioned, I took a turn in my career and life in healthcare. I actually worked in public health. I was the state of California's dental consultant for a number of time. I went to dental school, like my immigrant parents who had come here and immigrated here. And while I loved writing to them, that was a passion, and it always was a passion. And they really wanted me to focus on careers that, one, got them out of India, and two, they were like, oh yeah, this is a great career. I was 18. I'm like, sure, why not? And I did. I loved my dental career. It took some time for me to emerge as a writer. However, that career did lead me and open doors for me. And one of them was traveling to Uganda. I worked with an organization called Just Like My Child Foundation. They have something called the Girl Power Project, which is near and dear to my heart, and empowers girls in villages with education, allowing people to see how when you empower one girl, you can empower a whole village and community. And there's a number of research they have behind their education program. And so when I opened my eyes to that, I was there actually volunteering as a dentist. I ended up opening a dental clinic out in the Wero. It's a small village 2 hours outside of Kampala, which is the main city there. And it opened my eyes to the agency I wanted to highlight with the girl child. And what I mean by that is, while we talk about girls' rights here in the US, and there's a number we're still working on a lot, as we know right now what's happening with women's rights. And so there's so much that we want to change. I started to really feel this affinity to want to work and advocate for those that did not have a voice, and especially with girls. And so then I went on and I worked in India, with another organization, and now Girl Power is also in India. And I started to want to go back to my roots. And so this story kind of comes from that passion. It comes from this feeling of wanting to create social change, and advocating and giving voice to someone who's voiceless, in so many words to say. So that's where that came from. It started as a short story. I had not planned on writing the novel. I was making a collection of short stories, and I was always submitting short stories throughout my career. And then finally, I said, why don't I just write a book on it? And this story just took its own turn. There was just so much more to add. Eventually, I just kept working on just this one, and then that's how the novel unfolded.
Yeah, that I mean, again, it sounds like again you started at what would have been an ending for somebody, and not a bad one. I mean,
Totally.
going and becoming a dentist and working, like, that's great, but you took this opportunity and it sort of led you back almost to the beginning again.
Hmm. I think that's a really great way to put it. I spent years as literary editor at Ken Magazine. I don't even know if Ken still
I
exists.
totally Ken Magazine. I don't know if Ken is still
Okay.
around, but I don't recall if I ever submitted anything to Ken, but I knew
Okay.
several people who did. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was, that was like my lifeline in high school. It's funny, my parents would, it was like the chair of English, my honors English teachers, AP English, they would all call my parents and be like, she's got a talent, right? Like I won some PTA, it was some award, for the PTA, and it became like the national award or something Syosset was doing. And as you know, Syosset's so wonderful. We had like connections and all these, um, all open doors for the students, and I thought that was really, really cool. And my English teachers were so encouraging. I mean, I was constantly encouraged to submit or to, write more, or they'd read passages of what I wrote out loud. I mean, it just gave me confidence, and that was the biggest thing, that, um, I loved writing, and it was through their guidance, support, and understanding, and just telling me that I was a good writer. I think that was uh, what made me realize this is something I love. And so that is where that seed got planted. So to come full circle, yes, it's for sure, came from there, I think.
So the twins, were they like, did you talk to a lot of young women who'd been through this, through just some girls? Were they really based on anybody, or were they sort of an amalgam of just different people?
That's a good question. My twin fascination definitely occurs. I was an avid reader, back when I was a teenager, and one of the novels I remember reading, it was by Wally Lamb. I don't even know if he's a very, author from back then. And I think I can't remember. It must have been She's Come Undone, and then there was another one on
Yeah,
twins, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, is that the one on twins? I think is that. I think.
This is the part of the episode where I do the on the in real time research. The book about twins, let's see, is it I Know This Much Is True?
Oh, yes, good one.
Yes,
Yes,
I
that's the
know
one.
this much
Thank
is
you.
true.
So that book, I remember reading that and just fascinated with the idea of twins. And so, I also have a sister, and her and I are extremely close. She's also, obviously a Syosset native. And then she moved out here. I'm in San Diego. So she moved out here, when she came to grad school. And of course, we were together again and have a very strong bond. And so this idea of the sibling bond, but even deeper for the twins. I ended up, interviewing a twin psychologist, Barbara Klein, who she's wonderful. She helped me understand, some of it. She gave me resources, and I ended up reading, some of that research she sent on this idea that twins can have ESP. There have been reports of twins having a almost a telepathic connection, more so than siblings like my sister and I, who already are so close. And so that fascination led me into creating a story about twins. And then on top of it, yes, I interviewed, throughout the Girl Power Project, but also after that, during the research of the novel, I interviewed a nonprofit called Oasis India. I had many questions around what happens when girls are trafficked, what they do on the ground, the awareness that they promote. I mean, there were an abundance of information, and so gaining that, as well as having them, read my novel, really helped me make it real, but then also have the fictional element of what I wanted to create. I wanted to create a world where these girls were like all girls. Like, one of them writes poetry, and one of them is not sure what she wants to do, and she's a rebel, and and create that world where it makes someone who is reading this, what I would hope is to feel so connected to them, and to understand that, well, this happens everywhere. It happens in our country. It happens in India. It happens in Europe. It happens all over. And who it happens to is someone just like me. And so that's really the crux of it on a deeper awareness level, is what I was trying to get at, and create. So they are created, as you can say, like you're asking. However, there are real like elements to where they come from. I'm a poet, so that was easy for me to make her, love poetry. There's photography in there. They spent a lot of time in New York City, one of them. So all my time in New York City was really my memories, So that was just really the fun part of creating that world and these characters.
So talk a little bit about Deep Origins.
Oh, sure. So Deep Origins, thank you, is my husband and I. We have a company. We have an e-commerce site. It's our baby. We sell meditation products, and we also, prior to that, had meditation courses. I have three yoga teacher trainings. So mindfulness and yoga are a huge part of my life. It's woven into the novel as well. The girls have a yoga teacher at their school, and so when they're in these situations, they fall back on that sometimes, not without even knowing that that's what they're doing. And so I kind of put that in there as well. So yeah, it's just our company.
When did you get the book deal, and when did you write this from start to finish? How long did it take you?
So I'm a mom, so that's a really loaded question because I start and finish things. But I started the novel back in 2012, I want to say, as a short story. So yes.
Yeah, you mentioned the short story.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was 10 years ago. And then I would slowly start to build on it every once in a while. I didn't pay much attention to it for my kids' early years. I was really focused on yoga and, my career and our company. And then I re-engaged writing it. I want to say just about 5 years ago. I thought, let me pull this out. And I had gone to a writers conference in San Francisco. It was a mommy needs a break weekend. And you're nodding. I know
No, mommies never need a break.
Oh,
Mommies
right. Yeah.
never, ever.
24/7. So it was just, yeah. So about 5 years ago, I thought, let me just bring this out again. And it felt so amazing to be like reading it out loud with other writers. I was in workshops working on it. And that's when I really started putting a little more into it. My public health career took off, and I was working so many hours. I was traveling a lot. So then I would only really work on it when I traveled. It was when the pandemic happened. Everything slowed down. I was no longer running to Sacramento. I had started thinking I want to focus on my nonprofit more. I have a nonprofit with a family foundation. And I thought, well, what are the causes I really want to work on? And again, this idea of the girl child came to me. So I thought, well, let me work on this novel and figure out this, talk about this nonprofit. And it was about in 2020, I walked down the stairs and I had been at my laptop like almost every night, just working on the book. I told my husband I was done. And he said, "What?" He's like, "What do you mean you're done?" Like it was just out of nowhere. But really, it wasn't out of nowhere. I had just finally had the space. I wasn't, we all were home and not going anywhere. So that was the blessing of that pandemic. I finished my novel. I started working with an editor. And so December of 2021, after a lot of querying, for anyone out there who's an aspiring writer, you know what the cold querying feels like. It is horrible, to get rejections, to not hear from agents, to not hear from publishing, from publishers. Finally, December 2021, I got an interview with an indie publisher. They were interested. I still didn't want to feel like excited about the whole thing because I didn't know what would happen. I was kind of burnt at that point. I was going to take a break from querying, and of course, I think that's what the universe does when we let things go. Doors open, and so they offered a deal about a week before my 40th birthday. So so it was a nice
Excellent.
birthday
That's so
present.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was really cool. And then it's just been the journey since then, just with them, building out until it comes to life out in the world. It's the editing process has now been done. So it feels really good. It feels good to just finally be able to birth this book.
Awesome. So, so you were talking before about some of the teachers that really encouraged you, and I'm curious who they were, because I think you graduated in 99, so you're 2 years younger than me.
Okay.
So we were around the same time. We probably had some of the same teachers.
I'm sure we did. So obviously for Ken Magazine, it was Mr. Collier. Was he
Yes.
there when you were there? So I mean, I can't, he was amazing. I mean, the way the submissions worked for Ken Magazine, where there was no name on them. But he just knew my writing. He just knew it. So he'd see it and he knew it was one of my stories, I think. But anyway, he just kept telling me to keep submitting and keep writing. And then he was like, "Are you going to join?" And then I was on literary editor, I was on staff. And every year from my sophomore to senior year, I won best piece. And it was clearly evident that it was his support, guidance that just like encouraged me to keep submitting and writing. And so he's one. Dr. Simons was my teacher my last year. Was he there when you were there?
I think so, but I do not think I actually had him. This is the part where I was just like, I know the name. Was that somebody I
Yeah. So
had?
he was a really great teacher. I don't know if you're right. I think he had but what was great about him was he suggested we read books that weren't really mainstream and to do that in public high school, I thought was really amazing. One of the books he had us read at the time was Black Boy. It's by Richard Wright.
Yeah, I read that also.
Yep.
I do not remember. Now I'm having like one of those I don't know what they
Just
call it, where you're going back and you're just like, oh, maybe it was him. But yeah, we
yeah.
read that I was actually just thinking about that book the other day.
Oh wow. So he's the one who had really said we have to read this book. So he might have opened the gate for people, wanting to do it before I got taken his class. But when I took his class, we read it. And as you know, that was a book that's been banned in many schools. They think it's political, religious, but it just opened my eyes to social justice. And I'd already been there. I mean, I was loving rap music, and I was doing all the things my parents weren't excited about, but I was attending rallies. It was already innately in me. I think if there's anything that we know when it comes to social causes, it's like that inkling, that fire is there. It's just how do we nurture it? And so having teachers like him who allowed for the openness to be able to read topics like that, with racial issues, poverty, domestic violence, I mean, all of that, it was all in there. And so that was another teacher I won't forget. And I mean, there's just so many. I'm trying to think of who my 10th grade English teacher was.
I was actually just thinking when you were talking about Black Boy, that was Richard Wright.
Richard Wright. Yep.
Richard Wright. You know, we talk a lot now in the educational world and in the library world about the importance of own voices books.
Mhm. Totally.
And that I think, you know, there were others, and obviously now we have, I mean, not as many authors, you know, who, but you know, we're expanding, and you know, of course, Angie Thomas's book is another one
Mhm.
that is controversial, but also is, you know, I know They Read the Hate You Give,
Yep.
and her other books are actually also fabulous.
Yes.
On the Come Up, which was the follow-up to that. Like in a way, I felt like that was even better because it like the first one was like, here's something very current that a lot of people
Yes.
are talking about. Let's discuss it. And then with the other one, she's like, okay, let's dig a little bit deeper into everything. But you know, like I think with the Richard Wright book, one of the things that was so good was really it was one of the first books that was introduced that was about the topic of social justice, and it was written by a Black man who like was had lived this.
Yeah,
And
it's his memoir, right? I mean, that's
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
So it wasn't like, you know, like we, you know, I'm not saying like, you know, we read To Kill a Mockingbird, which does, but
Yes.
it's a very different story than a story that's written by somebody who lived it as opposed to being adjacent to it and being white and commenting on the topic, which, you know, again, like I'm not knocking To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a great book. It's a classic, but the idea of having a high school class read Black Boy in the 90s,
Yep.
which was really an adult own voices book, is just, you know, yeah, that was pretty radical at the time.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
radical now.
it's totally, and we're talking
Yeah.
about it right now, you and I, right? After all these years, it's one of the first things that popped to my mind when you asked me the question. And what I do remember is, we had read it. It was like only a year had happened when before a Florida, you know, person, I don't know if it was a school or a town had a oh, it was like a school system, and I think it was Jacksonville had basically, you know, challenged the book and banned it, and for a lot of the schools saying that it would make kids of different races have hard feelings. And so it was the truth of that scared this place, right? And so that when I wrote my book, one of the hardest things was here I am, you know, really loving everything about my culture, whether it's the yoga or that it's brought to the West, you know, the meditation, all of these wonderful, beautiful aspects of Indian culture. There are so many, and yet one of the things that I constantly questioned as a child um, was this unequal status of women and men in India. And I mean, everywhere, even where I saw it here. But for me, culturally, I was torn between two worlds. I was American and I was Indian, and I was in this, you know, world. And so that was something that was really important to me, to write an own voice book in that narrative, to understand the light and dark of somewhere I loved deeply and dearly, and the almost the call and cry for change to occur is beyond, you know, is beyond the words of my novel. It's just to spark that awareness and to bring it in the world. So yeah, I think there is something that happens through the pages, as turning the pages, you know, with a pun and no pun intended, but as you turn the pages of a book, in an own voice book, there's a heart and soul that comes into that is deeper than anything else, because and that's probably what stood out about coming full circle with Black Boy, for me. And yeah, and you know, I'm trying to think of so who was teaching honors English in 10th grade? It was Miss, I'm trying to remember one of the teachers.
I remember. So there was Miss Song, was it? There was
It was
somebody with
another male
that
teacher,
name.
Mr. with the G, maybe?
Mr. Who?
With his last name might have started with the G. I can't
I
remember.
can't remember. I know there was Mr. Board.
Oh, Mr. Board was my that's so funny. I didn't have him as a teacher. However, I was an officer in the Martin Luther King Jr. Club. Uh,
Yes.
Another
Yeah,
advocacy,
that was,
and
yep.
that was him. Yeah, and he was also just. I loved hearing his stories. Of him in the '60s and rallying and all of it.
And he played guitar in
He
class.
did.
That I remember. He had like he performed this song, and I never had him either, but he was always around and we always knew what he was about. And I just remember he played some song to the tune of Honky Tonk Woman, just
Really,
about
I
like,
don't remember.
yeah, it was just like it was just so like, in a way, I always found that really bold, because you're like, if you're gonna sing a song on a guitar like to a bunch of high school kids,
Yeah, yeah,
like that, you're really opening yourself up. And he really did, like believe in everything, and was really about sharing that part of himself. So yeah,
yeah.
everyone who's come on here who's talked about him has mentioned that they remember him playing guitar in
Yeah,
class.
I forgot that he was an English teacher. I just knew him as Mr. Board, our Martin Luther King Jr. club advisor, and he was just, it was so wonderful to hear. I mean, when we did talk about change, and he had it, he had the heart in it, right? And that was just really beautiful, because some of the questions I'd have, or just any topic we talked about in our club meetings, and even some of the marches we did, he was just really a great resource. And yeah, he was a good guy. I feel bad, because I think that sometimes he really wanted us to do more, but we were high school kids, and I think we were just like, sometimes it was a lot more social than we were than making, out there making change. But
Yeah.
when I was inspired by him, we were really inspired. So, if he ever listens to this, then yeah, I'm sorry if we if we're
I mean, I'm sure he understands. And to be honest,
totally.
like, here you are writing,
Yes,
a book about sisters in India, and like human trafficking. And that is, you went to, I mean, you went to Uganda to, be a dentist. So even if it was social,
totally.
it still was social for the sake of, planting those seeds of
Yeah.
uh, that. So, I mean, that's pretty great. Okay, so actually, so I'm grabbing my yearbook here, because
Okay.
now it's on.
Yeah, now it's on.
Now it's on.
Yeah, I wish I had mine with me. We would go through it together.
Okay, so let me see. So the English department,
Okay.
there was Miss Bazong, Nathan
Okay.
Board, who we spoke about before.
Yep.
Let's see, Edward Ciccio. I'm trying to remember him.
Oh, I do
Yeah.
remember that name. Okay.
Let's see. Um, Barry Groden, Harriet Garak.
Okay.
Yeah, see, this is like
Was
now
there
where
was there a Gould? Maybe I'm thinking of someone
that
else.
sounds no, that sounds about right.
Gould, right?
There was, let's see, Stephen Collier we spoke about, Collins. I believe, was
Oh,
she the one who
Collins.
had the British accent? Or was
There
that
was Collins. You're right. Um, and I don't, it's hard to remember who I had every year. Like, I must have had someone that I'm missing.
Lydia Esslinger, but she's mostly known as the forensics. She did
Yeah, she was
forensics.
forensics.
There's a lot of people. This
Yeah.
we had a big school.
Big school. I mean, and it's much bigger now, but yeah, no, I'm pretty sure. Um,
It's actually frighteningly bigger at the moment. When, I mean, obviously, between COVID and other unfortunate reasons why schools are pretty much difficult to get
yeah,
into.
I know.
Yeah, but I have gone into the high school for work stuff. Um, and I cannot believe how much they have added to this school. It's like the hallways, they just found ways to add more hallways. And sometimes when I tell people how big our graduating class was, I mean, obviously we have nothing on cities, but for, the island and for other people who, lived in smaller
Yeah.
towns, yeah, they're just like, wait, what?
I mean, I honestly don't remember how many. I just know that I recently went to my niece's graduation and I was completely shocked. It was so big. And I don't think ours was that big, but then someone told me that that Syosset is almost like double, triple its size at this point now. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
because we used to rent out the Tilly Center, I think,
Mm,
in LIU for our graduation. And
mhm,
then
mhm.
by the time my brother graduated 10 years later, it was, I think, like Hofstra University or something.
Yeah, where did we have our graduation? I remember we had it 99. I can't recall. I do know that we had bodyguards at our graduation
Oh,
because
because Natalie was
Natalie
in, yeah,
Portman graduated
yes,
with
yes,
us.
yes.
And I do remember it feeling like, where are we going? Like we were like shuttled there. And it was just felt like a big, big thing. Whereas, I was like, oh, like, I had friends graduating in small towns nearby that they were just doing it at their school. I was like, we're
Yeah,
just doing it.
so that's like that's true. And we actually had Natalie on here.
Oh, you did?
No, and she, like, Mr. Collier is one of her favorite people.
Oh,
I had a class with her with Mr. Collier,
yeah.
and that was actually the password to get into the meeting was Mr. Collier. And the first
Oh,
thing
that's
she
so
said when
funny.
she comes on is Mr. Collier going to be here? Am I getting a surprise? And we're like, we're sorry. We knew he was a teacher.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, but yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I do remember hearing about that. But yeah, do you ever get back here?
Yeah, so I would love to. I actually was just there. My family lives not too far away. And so my cousin had her wedding in Huntington. And so I went back. We went to the wedding. It was so surreal to be on Long Island again. I felt really good. I was showing my kids like, the Italian ice spot down the street from my old house, like all of it. They're like, "What?" I was like, "Yes, we used to spend a lot of time in these places." And then the train station, all of it. And then my friend from years ago just moved to Syosset, and his neighborhood is near where I was. So we stayed with him, and it was really nice to just be in my old town with his family, and so yeah, we definitely would love to. I'd love to make it back. I'd love to come and even just visit the high school. I just recently gave a talk over at Merrick. It's a small college out here in San Diego. And what I started realizing is at that age, there was just it was just like my mind was so open, right? And I remember feeling like hearing these topics of conversation on social change and what to do about it. And so one of the talks I gave was just writing for social change. I mean, it's such a easy way to express yourself and then create some sort of ripple effect in the world. And so the whole writing exercise was based on that. And so I always thought about how imagine in Syosset High School if I had had that, what would that have? It would have probably, but already I had such a great foundation there. So yeah, I'd love to one day come back and
Present
visit,
your book,
talk about
maybe?
that.
Uh, Present your book or talk about,
Yeah.
um, yeah, even at the library. I don't know if you've been there when we renovated, but
So I want to see the renovation because I can't tell you how much time at that library. It's- I feel like an OG. It was back when, we had the card catalog, like it was real. Like it was no longer.
yeah, the sad thing about the card catalog is, that they've become collector's pieces.
Oh, really? Okay.
Card catalogs in general are like a hot
I
commodity,
do I do
and
have a bookmark someone gave me from a New York. There was like a for giving a talk, or I was speaking to a friend and she gave me a bookmark
right,
of a
right.
card catalog. And I'm like, oh, this is so interesting,
Oh,
but I
it's totally like a hot piece of furniture and has been for quite a while. I actually have a smaller one now downstairs. But when I was a library student and I just started as a trainee at Syosset Library, which I started there and I didn't expect to now have a 20-year career there. But they were saying to me, someone had said, oh, the old card catalogs are downstairs and we're going to get rid of them. Do you want one? And I remember thinking that would be really cool, but I still live in my parents' house and it's packed
Oh,
and I can't imagine
wow.
that they'd let me keep it. So I was just like, I'd like to, but no, thank you. And I'm just like, I should have been like, we're
Oh,
doing this. Let's move all of this stuff because
yes.
now that Syosset Library and the town of Syosset has kind of become so important to my career and just in general, and libraries basically being to me just a very important way of getting
Oh,
stories out and having
amazing. Yeah.
books. you know I'm just like I really wanted that piece of Syosset history, but what are you gonna do?
What are
Right?
you gonna do? Oh no. Well, I have to tell my friend who gave me this bookmark. Thank you. It's a collector's piece. I guess I didn't realize. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
um,
it's really crazy. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, it would be great to have, obviously to have your book in the library,
yeah, I'd love to.
and to just connect. I mean, obviously, when I was a kid, the community, was mostly white, but some diversity was coming in. We were getting, more South Asian, East Asian.
Yep.
Definitely it was changing, and now I believe the demographic is very much more diverse than it was when I was a kid. And we do have a lot of um, adults and teenagers who do want to read stories by authors who are, who they can see their own heritage in, they can see
Mhm.
themselves in. And we also have, just we have white readers who want to read about different cultures and learn, from the voices, of the own voices. I think I can't wait to see your book in the library. I think it'll be really cool.
I would love to. It'd be an honor. I'd love to. Yeah, let me know how, it's, I know that I don't know how libraries order. It's obviously on Ingram, or
Yeah,
if we can help facilitate anything, or even, be there, and whatever it is, I would
cool.
love to play homage to just my hometown. Yeah, it's been really awesome to we have a little Facebook chat of Syosset High School graduates, and so I want to thank one of them, Tom. He was, kind of who had I'd spoken to, my friend Anila, as well, still my friend. We lost touch a little, but when I told her I'm coming out with my book, she was my partner in crime during Ken. So we would, putting together a magazine, we would stay late, and it took a long time. It would be dark sometimes. We'd come driving home. But really, I think it's just there's just Sasset's a really special place, right? It's like it's hard to describe in words, but it's a really special town for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And like this, I think it's also important to say it was a town that certainly had money to bring the resources. So we
Yep.
were very privileged in that
Yep.
way. I mean, I remember when I went to college and I mentioned that we had we had a TV studio in our school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people were like, I don't understand, you had a TV studio in
Yep.
your school. I mean, of course, now we all walk around with cameras more powerful than
Oh,
what was
yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and editing tools that are crazy. But back in that time period, I mean, that was really huge. And not only that, but we had the teachers
Yep.
behind it who, you want to be a writer, we have Ken. You want
Yep.
to be involved in social justice, we have the Martin Luther King Club. You want to do TV production or radio? Here you go. We
Yep. We
got
have
it. We'll make this happen. And it was a very special place and it was a very lucky place. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that for quite a while. So
Yeah, I mean, we realized it was like So I was born in Queens with my immigrant family and my parents, who Syosset was like their dream. I mean, it was their end stop. Like they made their way to Long Island, and we had an extended family living in our house with like my aunts and my uncles and my grandparents and my cousin who was just immigrated. And I mean, everybody lived with us. And my dad and mom were like um, they were their I guess the roots of how they're going to get build their life in New York. And so um, it was really my parents' determination to get to Syosset. They were like, their two best friends were there that they had come to the country with, and they said such a good town, the school district. And so when we finally got there, I was 13 and or 12, I believe it was 12. Yep. And I remember just knowing that this is a good place because my parents did everything in their power to get there. And so, yeah, I mean, to say the privilege was there, they knew it. They knew that Syosset is like you mentioned, lucky to have all of the things that were there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you so much. This was really,
Yeah.
really fun. I like it. Any interview where I get to talk about a book and then I get to pull out the yearbook and just start talking about that is a good chat. If people want to find out more about Deep Origins, where can they look?
Yeah, so Deep Origins, we have a website, but more importantly, it's just more of our like e-commerce website. But if they'd like to find out more about the book, they can go to www.formysisterbook.com, and they'll find information about me, about our company, but also just everything that I'm doing, plus information on the book itself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are you going to work on another book after this? I should have asked you that
I
before.
am, yeah, I am working on another book, and hopefully we'll chat again about it.
Awesome. So once again, this was Jessica with Turn the Page podcast. Our guest today was
Puja Shah.
and we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.